Welcome to Movie Magic 96, your one-stop shop for all things movies. From reviews to unboxings and collections, I'm here to celebrate the magic of cinema. Now, let's roll the film. I'm so excited to share with you all my first ever experience at New York Comic Con, which took place on Saturday, October 11th. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, welcome. Be sure to check out my other convention videos in the conventions playlist. But without further ado, let's get started. First off, I've always wanted to go to Comic-Con since high school, but somehow I just never made it happen. I'd actually been to the Javits Center before for the New York International Auto Show back in 2015, and it was massive. The building's been around since the 1980s, has 5 floors, and covers over 3 million square feet. Now, I'm a big superhero and Star Wars fan, but my brothers are into anime, which I never really got into. A little backstory about the ticket buying process. It was a pain. I got mine through the general public sale, but they also had VIP, superfan, and fan verification pre-sales. You had the choice to either get your badge mailed for an extra fee or pick it up at will call, but I wanted to avoid the long lines and confusion, so I got mine in advance. Saturday, by the way, is the most crowded day and usually sells out first. Now, tickets were about $90 per day or $280 for a 4-day pass. And the guest list was honestly a little underwhelming for me, although if I had the budget, I would have loved to meet Sigourney Weaver, Lawrence Fishburne, or Norman Reedus, but photo ops range from $190 to $250 plus fees. At least the New York City Comic-Con official app made it super easy to find panels, maps, and schedules in the downtime. I definitely recommend downloading it. If you don't know, for context, I live in New Jersey. I met up with one of my best friend's younger brothers, and he drove us into Manhattan to stay at my friend's apartment the night before, since the con opened at 10 a.m. on Saturday. The next morning it was me, my friend, his wife, and his younger brother. We took an Uber and arrived at 10:30. Now, here's where things get annoying. Even though we had physical badges, we still had to activate them online. You had to go to a link, type in the digits on the back, and transfer tickets if someone else bought them, which was very confusing. Now, luckily, I bought mine myself, which made it easier. But honestly, if you can, buy your own ticket. It'll save you all a headache. Once everything was activated, we scanned our badges and entered the Javits Center, which was incredible. Our first event was the Spotlight on George R.R. Martin panel at 11 a.m. in room 405 North, hosted by Joe Hill, which is Stephen King's son. Even though I've never watched Game of Thrones and I'm not big into fantasy, the conversation was relaxing and fascinating. George talked about some of his lesser-known works and personal facts, like he was born in Bayonne, New Jersey, attended the first ever Comic-Con in 1964, and is a Brooklyn Dodgers and New York Jets and Giants fan. After that, we explored my favorite area, the show floor. It had booths from Marvel, Capcom, Paramount, Nickelodeon, Blumhouse, Handmade by Robots, My Melody, Kuroma, and so much more. You could honestly spend your entire day going from booth to booth. I really wanted to meet SpongeBob and Patrick, and my friend wanted to try the Resident Evil Requiem demo, but the lines were over an hour, so we passed. Later on for lunch, I grabbed some Korean tacos. Now, 2 tacos and a water were $22 with no fries, so it was definitely overpriced, but what can you do? After lunch, we tagged along with my friend's wife, who had a photo op with James McAvoy in Hall 1A, which is massive. We checked in at 2 p.m., waited in a long line, and eventually got to meet him. The whole experience lasted about a minute, but James was really nice. I'm used to horror conventions where you can chat, get an autograph, and take a selfie all at once, so this was a new system to experience. You can both get a printout photo and a digital copy, and you can order extra prints or a protective sleeve for a fee. Later, as we walked the floor again, I turned around and spotted Jim Cummings, the legendary voice of Scar's singing voice in The Lion King, Pete in A Goofy Movie, Nessus in Hercules, Shredder in TMNT, Hondo in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and of course Winnie the Pooh and Tigger since the late 1980s. I went for an autograph only, $60 with no selfie included, which was kind of pricey, but worth it since I don't know when I'll ever meet him again. After that, we grabbed a snack, took a breather, and prepared for our last big event of the day, a main stage panel for the upcoming FX series, The Beauty. The panel featured Ryan Murphy, creator of Nip Tuck, Glee, and American Horror Story, along with Anthony Ramos, Jeremy Pope, Evan Peters, Rebecca Hall, and Ashton Kutcher. The show's premise: people take a drug that makes them their most beautiful selves, but they implode within a year. It totally reminded me of The Substance, which I loved last year. Now, I'm a huge Ashton Kutcher fan from that 70s show, The Butterfly Effect and Punk'd, and I've always liked Evan Peters, especially in Kick-Ass and X-Men Days of Future Past. It was the perfect way to end the day, even if I don't plan on watching the show. Afterward, we took the subway back to my friend's apartment, exhausted, and had some pizza and watched Futurama. I had an amazing time and definitely plan to go back next year and maybe even hit up some other big name conventions too.
Rear-ended, and all the Balrogs for that year was destroyed. And I said, well, you're going to make a replacement? And the Balrog guy said, no, I'm moving to Iman, and you'll never hear from me again. And I never did. And that was the end of the Balrog Awards.
I was here for, there was another one, but I don't remember.
And the Beauty.
Professor Marston and the Wonder Women, this film about the history of, thank you.
Tron Ares.
Which opened yesterday, and I believe is the #1 movie in the So we're very excited to be here today. One of the reasons we wanted to bring Beauty to Comic-Con was this is my first sci-fi thriller before and after makeover show ever. It's based off of a really wonderful graphic novel by Jason Hurley and Jeremy Hahn, who I believe are here. It's interesting how to describe. We have to be careful. We don't want to give too many spoilers away for this show. But we live in a culture that I would say of, particularly now, a beauty-obsessed culture. And when we first started to work on this, began the rise of Ozempic, began the rise, I think, of everybody talking about all of the famous plastic surgeons in the world and before and after photos. We all know who's done the work. And it was interesting to write about our culture through the prism of, all right, that's out there. What would happen, and this is the premise of our show, if a bunch of incredibly powerful billionaires get together for a powwow and use a lot of their money to create a fountain of youth drug that only they get. And this drug is imbued with, they think, the ability to work with RNA technology that came around with the COVID vaccine to reorganize their DNA and make them the best possible specimens they could be. Of course, because it's a sci-fi show, there is a catch, which they soon find out. There's a glitch in the shot in which you only last 855 days or something, and then you explode, and then it's all over. They're in the rub. So as our story begins, which I love doing, there's a rash of exploding supermodels all over the globe who are captured on cell phones. So Evan and Rebecca are called in to investigate. Jeremy and Anthony turned out to be working for Ashton's character, who is one of the originators of this drug. And the great thing about being friends with someone like Ashton, who is also an entrepreneur, is when we were working on the pilot, he was the first person I called and I said, you know a lot about the business world. Talk about if this drug really existed. And apparently people are really trying to do a version of this drug as we speak, and I'm sure within the next 10 years there will be a version of it. So Ashton, why don't you talk about what you told me, which I thought was absolutely fascinating, about if this drug, the Beauty, really existed, what would it be worth today?
Hi everyone. So Ryan was telling me about this idea for the show, and I was like, oh wow, there are people that are trying to do this, and if you just look at the GLP-1 market, which is like Ozempic and Mounjaro and all these things, by 2032, that's predicted to be a $500 billion market. And that's just for weight loss and supposedly just for diabetes, but now there are other versions of it that are coming on that are specifically for weight loss. And then if you look at the cosmetic enhancement market, that's another $500 billion total addressable market. And that's just domestically in the United States. And so it's $1 trillion market if a drug like this were to exist. And there are some people that are building companies that are like genetically modifying babies, like pre-birth, to make them the optimal version of themselves. And those super baby companies already exist. And a lot of them are like being built right now for like variable genetic defects like sickle cell anemia and things that like can kill you. But it would be very easy to just target specific genes that would allow you to be whatever outcome you wanted to be. And so effectively it would be a multi-trillion dollar market. And there are a couple of companies that are like these fountain of youth companies, which then you have to tack on top of this, because not only does it make you the most beautiful version of yourself, it makes you feel younger and genetically be younger. The Beauty does, that is. And there's a company that is being built to do this right now that has billions of funding, and in fact is actually being funded by some of the world's most wealthy humans.
If you also went to NYCC this year, drop a comment down below and tell me about your experience. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram at MovieMagic1996. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, go to a convention today.